Learn how a father's defiance saved his brain-dead son, a boy broke racial barriers to reach the stars, and a soldier survived flames to save his crew. True stories of unstoppable courage. What if a father's refusal to give up brought his son back from the brink of death? Or a child's defiance in a segregated library led him to NASA? Imagine a soldier, engulfed in flames, saving his crew against all odds. These aren't just stories, they're real events that redefine human strength. Dive into the breathtaking tales: George Pickering III's miraculous recovery, Ronald McNair's rise to astronaut, and Henry Irwin's heroic World War II sacrifice. Get ready to be inspired by the power of hope and resilience. Olivia's Auto Brewery Syndrome, a DUI that didn't add up. In a quiet neighborhood in upstate New York, Olivia and her husband, Mark, had just finished a leisurely dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant. The evening had been filled with laughter and the clinking of wine glasses, but nothing out of the ordinary. Olivia had been cautious, limiting herself to just 4 glasses of wine over the course of several hours. She was the designated driver, ensuring that Mark could enjoy his evening without worry. Despite the casual nature of the evening, neither Olivia nor Mark could have predicted what would happen next. As they parted ways in the parking lot, Olivia noticed a flat tire on her car. While waiting for roadside assistance, a concerned passerby misinterpreted the situation and called the police, fearing she had been in an accident. When officers arrived, they observed Olivia's glassy eyes and slurred speech, leading them to suspect intoxication. Despite her insistence that she was sober, they administered a breathalyzer test. To everyone's shock, the device registered a blood alcohol concentration, BAC, of 0.33%, more than 4 times the legal limit. This startling result left Olivia stunned. She was fully aware of how little she had drunk and how carefully she had paced herself throughout the evening. Olivia couldn't understand how she could possibly register such a high BAC. She had been careful not to drink too much, and with only 4 glasses of wine over 6 hours, she should have been well below the legal limit. The officers, equally perplexed, decided to investigate further. What followed was a thorough medical investigation that would uncover something most people have never heard of: Auto Brewery Syndrome, ABS. ABS is an extremely rare condition where the body produces alcohol internally through the fermentation of carbohydrates in the digestive system. Olivia's gut microbiome, which includes various yeasts and bacteria, had become imbalanced. This imbalance caused her body to naturally ferment the carbohydrates she consumed, turning them into alcohol without any external alcohol consumption. The discovery of Auto Brewery Syndrome was both a relief and a revelation for Olivia. It explained the unexpected BAC readings and the symptoms she had occasionally experienced, such as dizziness, fatigue, and the occasional foggy mind. These were symptoms she had previously attributed to stress or lack of sleep. Olivia had never suspected that what she ate could turn into alcohol, causing her to feel impaired without ever picking up a drink. With this newfound understanding, the DUI charge against Olivia was dismissed. Medical professionals advised her to make significant changes to her diet in order to manage her condition. Olivia needed to drastically reduce her carbohydrate intake and avoid foods like bread, pasta, and sugary products that contributed to her body's fermentation process. Additionally, antifungal treatments were recommended to help rebalance her gut microbiome and reduce the overgrowth of yeast that caused the fermentation. It was a major lifestyle change, but one that Olivia was willing to make in order to avoid the embarrassing and life-altering consequences of a false DUI arrest in the future. The case not only revealed a rare medical condition but also raised questions about how we interpret breathalyzer results. The standard procedure for DUI testing is to administer a breathalyzer to individuals suspected of being under the influence of alcohol. However, in cases like Olivia's, the results can be misleading if the person's body is producing alcohol naturally. This discrepancy underscores the need for greater awareness of medical conditions that can mimic the effects of alcohol consumption. While Auto Brewery Syndrome is extremely rare, Olivia's case has become a point of discussion in medical circles. Experts now stress the importance of considering underlying health issues when interpreting breathalyzer results, particularly in legal situations where someone's reputation and freedom are on the line. It was a reality check for the officers involved, who had initially assumed Olivia was just another driver under the influence. The complexity of medical science and the body's ability to produce alcohol without any external sources is a baffling concept for most, and it became clear that medical professionals and law enforcement alike need to be more informed about such conditions. As Olivia adjusted to her new lifestyle, she became an advocate for greater awareness of ABS. She shared her story with others, hoping to prevent similar misunderstandings and to encourage those experiencing unexplained symptoms to seek medical advice. Olivia was determined to raise awareness about Auto Brewery Syndrome and the potential dangers of misdiagnosing individuals based on faulty breathalyzer results. She wanted to ensure that others would not have to face the same confusion and frustration she had experienced. Olivia's journey through this medical mystery was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of never underestimating the power of knowledge and understanding in overcoming life's challenges. Through her advocacy, Olivia has also highlighted the broader issue of how rare medical conditions often go undiagnosed. ABS, like many other unusual disorders, often flies under the radar because it does not conform to the more common, easily recognizable symptoms that the medical community typically expects. While Olivia's condition was rare, it wasn't the only example of a misunderstood medical condition. There are numerous individuals who struggle with symptoms that seem inexplicable, yet once diagnosed, these conditions explain years of misdiagnosis or even wrongful assumptions about their behavior. For Olivia, the emotional impact of this entire ordeal was significant. She had lived with the frustration of not understanding why she occasionally felt off after eating certain foods, attributing her symptoms to stress or fatigue. To have her entire life upended by an unexpected diagnosis was overwhelming. But as she became more informed about ABS and took charge of her health, Olivia felt empowered. She knew that sharing her story could help others who might be going through similar experiences. She wasn't just advocating for herself anymore, she was speaking up for those who might never get the answers they so desperately needed. The experience also made her more compassionate toward others who had been misjudged or misunderstood because of their medical conditions. The stigma of being arrested for DUI, combined with the fear and confusion of not knowing what was happening to her body, had taken a toll on Olivia. But by embracing her diagnosis and speaking out about her journey, she was turning her challenging experience into a teaching moment, giving others the knowledge to avoid the same pitfalls. Olivia's case sheds light on the complexities of modern medicine and how advancements in research and understanding can unravel the mysteries of the human body. It's a reminder that sometimes the most perplexing situations can be solved with the right knowledge and a little bit of compassion. Robert Ladrew, a detective's sleepwalking murder confession. Robert Ladrew, once a well-respected detective in a coastal town in northern France, was faced with an investigation that would ultimately lead him down a path he could never have imagined. It began like any other case. A string of missing sailors had been reported along the rocky shores, a pattern that had been worrying the local community. But this case took an eerie turn when a murder was discovered on the beach one fateful morning. A young man's lifeless body had been found just near the cliffs, his face frozen in an expression of horror. A thick layer of fog had rolled in that morning, and the scene was more surreal than anything Robert had ever encountered. Robert, known for his meticulous and often unorthodox methods, immediately took charge of the investigation. He combed the area for clues, his sharp eyes catching even the smallest of details. As he walked along the rocky shore, something caught his attention: unusual footprints, far too large to belong to the victim. They led to a secluded part of the beach, where the ground was soft and freshly disturbed. It was a strange place to find any trace of a killer, but there they were, footprints that seemed to match no one's. After hours of analysis, Robert couldn't help but feel a strange sense of recognition about the pattern. It was as though he had seen those steps before, even though no one had been on the beach at that time of night. What followed next was a series of unsettling revelations. Robert had always prided himself on his abilities as a detective, but what was unfolding before him was something beyond comprehension. He began to feel an increasing sense of disorientation, as if the walls between his mind and the case were blurring. There was something about the case, something he couldn't put his finger on. As the investigation progressed, Robert couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was somehow connected to the crime. His thoughts became increasingly fragmented, and the unsettling truth slowly began to form in his mind. He had been sleepwalking that night. The realization hit Robert like a cold wave. He had unknowingly killed the victim while sleepwalking. The truth was terrifying. Robert was not only the lead investigator in the case but also the murderer. The thought haunted him as he reviewed the evidence. The footprints found at the scene matched his shoes, and more disturbingly, several witnesses had described seeing a figure on the beach the night of the murder. That figure, it turned out, was him. The pieces began to fit together in a way he couldn't have imagined, and with horror, Robert understood that the murder was committed by his unconscious self. It was a surreal moment, one that felt like the very ground beneath him had given way. Robert had always believed in the power of his instincts and his sharp mind. But now, his mind was his own worst enemy. It wasn't just the horror of realizing that he had taken a life, it was the terror of the unknown. Sleepwalking, a condition he had never fully understood, had driven him to commit a murder he had no recollection of. This was not the man he was. This was someone else, someone entirely out of his control. With the truth weighing heavily on him, Robert knew he had no choice but to confess. The confession came not as a release, but as an unbearable burden. He reported his discovery to his superiors, who were equally shocked by the turn of events. The investigation had pointed to an unexpected suspect, Robert Ladrew himself. He was immediately removed from the case, and the haunting reality of his actions began to sink in. A man who had spent his career solving the darkest crimes was now the subject of one. As Robert grappled with the consequences of his actions, the law had no choice but to take drastic measures. Instead of facing trial, Robert was exiled from the town he had once protected. His career as a detective was over, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. The community, once his allies, now saw him as a danger, a man who could not even trust his own mind. The exile was not just a punishment, it was a life sentence to a solitary existence, removed from the place he had called home. The impact of Robert's confession rippled through his life. He found himself isolated in a remote area, far from any connection to the world he had once known. Each day, he relived the nightmare of his actions, knowing that the murder he had committed was not just the result of a criminal mind, but of something far more insidious, the uncontrollable forces of his own subconscious. The isolation became a prison, both physical and mental, as Robert struggled to come to terms with what had happened. His life, once defined by his pursuit of justice, was now defined by his own guilt. The eerie nature of sleepwalking as a cause for murder left him questioning everything he thought he knew about himself. The detective who had once been in control of every investigation now found himself at the mercy of his own mind. His quest for answers had turned into a quest for redemption, but he wasn't sure if such redemption was possible. In the years that followed, Robert's story became a chilling cautionary tale. It raised questions about the true nature of criminal behavior and the role unconscious actions might play in violent crimes. Was he a murderer, or was he a victim of his own mind? Could someone truly be held accountable for an act committed while they were unaware of it? These questions lingered long after Robert had been exiled, as the unsettling nature of sleepwalking and its potential consequences continued to haunt those who had known him. The case became an unsolved riddle, as much a mystery about the human mind as it was about the crime itself. Robert's life was forever changed by that one fateful night on the beach. It was a night he could never remember but would never forget. Ed Edwards, the reformed criminal who concealed more than he revealed. Ed Edwards was a man who seemed to have it all figured out. A reformed criminal, he had managed to turn his life around after serving time for his past transgressions. In the early 1970s, his story of redemption and transformation caught the attention of a popular American game show, To Tell the Truth. There, he appeared alongside two other men, each claiming to be the reformed criminal, and the panel of celebrities had to guess which one was telling the truth. His presence on the show was a testament to his journey from a life of crime to one of apparent rehabilitation. But what the audience didn't know, and what only a few would uncover, was that Ed's past was much darker and more complicated than he let on. The truth, as it often is in such cases, was far stranger than anyone could have anticipated. Ed's story seemed almost too perfect to be true. A man who had turned his back on a life of crime, had rebuilt his relationships, and was now even appearing on television as an example of second chances. But his family knew there was more lurking beneath the surface. His daughter, who had always been suspicious of the man she thought she knew, began to investigate his past. She started piecing together inconsistencies in the stories he told, things that didn't quite add up. The man who had been so eager to distance himself from his past had left behind a trail, hidden in plain sight, that only a few sharp eyes could decipher. As his daughter delved deeper, she began to uncover more troubling details about his life before the game show. It was then that the horrifying truth came to light, and Edwards was not just a reformed man, he was a serial killer. His hands had been stained with blood long before his appearance on To Tell the Truth, and the evidence was more than just circumstantial. His past crimes, some unsolved for decades, started to resurface. Police connected him to a series of brutal murders, including a double homicide that had baffled investigators for years. The pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place, revealing a chilling pattern of violence and manipulation. The most unsettling aspect of Ed's confession, however, was the eerie calm with which he recounted his actions. He admitted to his involvement in these murders without the emotional turmoil one might expect from someone who had committed such heinous acts. It was as if he had become numb to the severity of his crimes, perhaps because of the long years of hiding behind the mask of reformation. His demeanor was almost casual, which sent chills down the spines of those who heard his story. During his interrogation, Ed confessed to not just the double homicide but to several other murders that had remained cold for years. What was even more disturbing was his insistence that he had committed these crimes for reasons that seemed almost trivial. Insurance money, personal vendettas, and pure satisfaction appeared to be his driving forces. He showed no remorse for his actions, which struck fear into the hearts of those who knew him. The transformation from a man on a game show, beloved for his story of redemption, to a cold-blooded killer was not just a shocking revelation, it was a terrifying reminder of how appearances could be deceiving. As Ed's past unraveled, investigators found themselves facing a web of lies and deceit, but the most unsettling theory of all was his potential connection to the Zodiac Killer. Speculation had always surrounded the Zodiac Killer's identity, and many believed that the infamous killer had never been caught. Some now started to wonder if Ed Edwards had been the notorious Zodiac all along. There were eerie parallels between his methodical killings and the way the Zodiac had carried out his murders, including the cryptic letters and the sense of control he maintained over his victims and the public. The thought that someone like Ed could have been responsible for the Zodiac killings was a terrifying prospect, one that still lingers in the minds of those who continue to study unsolved crimes. Ed's arrest was a moment of disbelief for many who had known him as the charming, seemingly reformed criminal. His life, which had once appeared to be on a path of redemption, was now overshadowed by the darkness of his past. The shock of his arrest sent ripples through the community, and many began to question how they could have been so easily fooled by his act. His time on the game show, his charming persona, and his public appearance as a changed man now seemed like nothing more than a carefully orchestrated performance, a performance that had allowed him to slip through the cracks of justice for decades. As he faced trial for his crimes, the public's fascination with Ed Edwards grew. His case was one that demonstrated the terrifying possibility that a person could live a double life, hiding their true nature behind a mask of respectability. The idea that a man could appear on television, receive praise for his transformation, and yet be a murderer all along was a concept that rattled the community to its core. In the end, the full scope of his crimes, including the possibility that he may have been the Zodiac Killer, left many with more questions than answers. Ed Edwards' story remains one of the most unsettling and perplexing cases in the history of true crime. It's a haunting reminder that sometimes the most unlikely people harbor the darkest secrets. The reformed criminal on the game show was not a success story of redemption. He was a man who had learned to hide his true self behind a facade of normalcy, all while continuing to take lives in the shadows. His story serves as a chilling warning about the dangers of trusting appearances, especially when they mask a deep and terrifying darkness. The stories we've explored are remarkable, defying what we might consider normal or even possible. Olivia, Robert, and Ed each found themselves caught in bizarre, unpredictable circumstances that turned their lives upside down. At the heart of their tales is one undeniable truth: life is often stranger than fiction. Olivia's case stands as a prime example. A woman who had done everything right, limiting her alcohol intake to ensure she could drive safely, found herself facing a DUI charge after a routine night out. When the breathalyzer showed a BAC of 0.33%, far higher than what her consumption could explain, her story took an unexpected turn. The discovery of her rare condition, Auto Brewery Syndrome, shed light on how her body could ferment alcohol naturally, leading to a surprising and perplexing twist in her case. This bizarre event not only led to the dismissal of the charges but also raised awareness about this little-known condition, challenging conventional wisdom about what is truly possible in the human body. Then, we have Robert Ladrew, a detective whose career took an eerie and unsettling turn. While investigating a murder, he uncovered a horrifying truth: he had unknowingly committed the crime while sleepwalking. The case became a deeply personal one for him, as he confronted the disturbing reality that his own subconscious had turned him into a murderer. This strange turn of events led to his confession and ultimate exile, where he spent the rest of his life grappling with the consequences of a crime he had no memory of committing. His story forces us to question the nature of criminal responsibility and the thin line between unconscious actions and moral accountability. Finally, Ed Edwards, a man who appeared to have transformed his life from a past steeped in crime, was revealed to be hiding even darker secrets. His time on a popular game show, where he was celebrated for his reformed status, contrasted sharply with the violent criminal past that came to light. His daughter's investigation revealed his involvement in several murders, culminating in his chilling confession. What made his case even more haunting was the possibility that Ed Edwards might have been the Zodiac Killer, a theory that continues to linger. The revelation that someone so publicly reformed could be so deeply enmeshed in dark secrets underscores the unpredictability of human nature. These three stories, while unique, share a common theme: the unpredictability of life and the strange twists that often leave us questioning what we think we know. They remind us that reality, with all its complexities and mysteries, often defies our expectations. Each of these cases challenges our assumptions about the human experience, about trust, responsibility, and redemption, and offers a stark reminder that truth, as odd as it may seem, can sometimes be far stranger than fiction. As we reflect on these strange but true events, we are invited to ponder the mysteries that still exist around us. The world is filled with unexplained occurrences, some of which may never be fully understood. These stories urge us to remain open to the possibilities, to question the assumptions we take for granted, and to acknowledge that the truth may be far more complex and mysterious than we can ever imagine. Life is unpredictable, and the truth can be more unbelievable than fiction. Let this be a reminder that, no matter how strange or unsettling, the mysteries of our world continue to unfold in ways that we may never fully comprehend.